development of that park. We'll have representatives of the city here talking about that. But today we're lucky to be joined by Gail Payne with Reconnecting our Waterways, and she's going to talk about that project. If you have any questions, you can ask those at the conclusion of the presentation. Yep.
Great, thanks. Well, thanks so much, Alex, for inviting me and Ro to present to you today. And thanks to all of you for coming. I'm really excited to have this opportunity to share more about Reconnecting to our Waterways, which is more or less a relatively new initiative in the city of Indianapolis. How many of you had heard about Ro before the Plan 2020 announcement today? Yeah? Almost everybody? Great. Well, I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to probably speak for 20 to 30 minutes and then would really welcome your questions or for this to be more of a discussion. So, Reconnecting to our Waterways, it is a very unique type of organization. It's really a grassroots movement that is helping neighbors strengthen waterways. Like this is Bob Weaver from Flat 12, and they are located right on Pogues Run and Cottage Home. But it's also helping waterways strengthen neighborhoods. So this is kind of the other side of that gateway that Bob was standing next to, and that is an invasive sculpture made out of the invasive plant material that was taken out of Pogues Run, as you can sort of see there in the background, through the Lily Day of Service last year. The real goal of Reconnecting to our Waterways, in a nutshell, really, is to retain and attract Marion County residents and businesses, particularly in these really critical inner city neighborhoods, primarily those that have had quality of life plans. So when Reconnecting to our Waterways first got started, we really looked at certainly the water that goes all throughout Marion County, but really tried to leverage the great work that had been done through LISC and its quality of life planning to just further enhance what was going on there. I want to cut to, though, why, before I get to all of the other questions about how Ro works. Why is this initiative important, and why does it need to exist? And again, it's about retention and attraction to Marion County and getting people to live and work in these great spaces and making them great spaces where people will want to live and work. It's about more and better jobs. It's about cleaner and safer neighborhoods, like this is a picture of Fall Creek Place. All of this, just to connect the dots, if we can get more people who will want to work and live in these neighborhoods, we increase our tax base for public services like infrastructure and sidewalks and roads and bridges, police and fire, schools, parks, transit, all good stuff that we need and want in our neighborhoods that make great neighborhoods, are the basics of what every neighborhood really needs. And ultimately, yes, we think that Ro will eventually help create a cleaner, safer environment and help clean up our waterways. So it's, pardon the pun, kind of a ripple effect, really. If we can create these nodes of inspiration and density in our neighborhoods where there are a lot of great things happening, we feel that that will have a ripple effect not only on the greater neighborhoods surrounding that area, but also on the waterway itself, so that when people are more aware that they live close to a waterway or above a waterway, they will be much more conscious about what's going into their storm waters, down their drains. They will ultimately make our waterways a much safer place for recreational purposes and drinking water. Ro really came out of the Livability Challenge in 2010. It was sponsored by Central Indiana Community Foundation and CEOs for Cities, which is a national organization that asked Indianapolis to host this national conference and think about livability. What does that mean? How could a community like Indianapolis or any city across the country be a more livable place? And what it boiled down to was, how do we create art, nature, and beauty every day for everybody? If that is the definition of ultimate livability, what does that look like in Indianapolis? And amongst the themes that came out of that, how you make or create art, nature, and beauty every day for everybody, was reconnecting to your waterways. I mean, Indianapolis is not the only city in America that is somewhat landlocked, not on a coast or a major Great Lake. So looking at these waterways as assets, We have 6 waterways. There's actually some brochures in the back, and I'm sure Alex would be happy to grab one for you if you don't have one. But this map that's up here that's a little difficult to read basically shows where Row is focused. We have Little Eagle Creek. We are looking at the Lafayette Square area, the Central Canal, Fall Creek, Pogues Run, Pleasant Run, and the White River as the 6 waterways that intersect throughout Marion County. We also wanted to think about the connectivity, so not just at the water itself, but within a 10-minute walk, about a half mile, or a 20-minute bike ride, which is about 3 miles. So you'll sort of see the range and the scope of the area that we consider to be sort of that Row geographic area. So how are we doing this? How does Row work? Rather than creating a new nonprofit or operating it through a government agency or some other business model, Eli Lilly and Company actually brought to Row this idea of collective impact, a way of nonprofits, government agencies, for-profits, individuals, anyone who cares about a particular issue to bring what they already do towards a common agenda. So as this definition says, it's an assembly of like-minded individuals and organizations working towards a common goal. So that really is how Row works. We are leveraging existing partners and projects. As I mentioned, we started by leveraging the great work done through the quality of life planning process. We also partnered early on with the Office of Sustainability through the City of Indianapolis, Eli Lilly and Company and their Day of Service, Keep Indianapolis Beautiful, which actually organizes and coordinates Lilly Day of Service, but also does a lot of other work around the year around Row-related things. Central Indiana Community Foundation, which I had mentioned earlier, and their Inspiring Places initiative. I'm sorry, I meant to insert the DMD logo there, but the Department of Metropolitan Development, I'll get to later, has also been a huge part of Row from the very beginning. And we've got kind of an exciting announcement I'll get to in just a second. The Center of Urban Ecology at Butler University and LISC and its recent announcement of its Great Places Initiative 2020. So there are several big long-term projects that Row is included within or leveraging for its own work. So just in the last 3 years, 2012, 2013, and 14, this is just what we've attracted in terms of 6-figure dollars. I'm very excited to tell you that the Department of Metropolitan Development and Row are going to be announcing more publicly next week that the Community Development Block Grants for 2015 is going to include $1 million to be leveraged towards Row projects. So that is an extremely exciting development. And again, it's just more funding towards the projects and the work that we'd like to see along the Indianapolis waterways. As I mentioned, Lilly Day of Service to date has given about $1.5 million in cash, volunteer time, plant material, plus numerous other partner contributions way beyond that $1.5 million, as it's taken, in those last 3 years, almost all of its Lilly Day of Service projects have been focused on Row areas, removing invasives, treating those invasives year after they're removed, building those invasive sculptures, or just doing other projects, painting murals, but all targeted towards Row neighborhoods. The Butler Center for Urban Ecology is using the Row framework to leverage a $2.9 million National Science Foundation grant, and they are going to be educating about science through the arts, using the Row destinations and Row neighborhoods, and using dance, poetry, music, and visual art to educate the public about various science topics, all looking at informal education and the way people learn. So it's a great partnership and really exciting. The National Kresge Foundation, based out of Detroit, Michigan, awarded Reconnecting to Our Waterways $1.3 million last year for additional creative placemaking projects. And we're actually using some of that Kresge money with the CDBG funding in October to do a co-application for creative placemaking. As I mentioned, the list of great places 2020 initiative. That just got off the mark in the last couple weeks. In particular, the near west neighborhood of Michigan Street, west of White River, is one of the neighborhoods that was chosen as one of the 4 neighborhoods for the LISC Great Places 2020 initiative. And so that's going to be a really exciting thing to watch over time. Keep Indianapolis Beautiful estimates that approximately 30% of its program expenses every year, or about $3 million, is leveraged towards row neighborhoods. And on. Ivy Tech invested about $500,000 for new plant material. In fact, the culinary school at Ivy Tech planted an orchard, plum trees, apple trees, all types of fruit and vegetables, and they are making plum jam this fall from the plum trees that were planted through Lily Day of Service last year. It's just a wonderful full circle of the work that we hope to see and the success stories that we hope to tell from this work later on. And CICF has given to date $375,000 in cash to leverage towards all of this. So lots of success so far. Row has a steering committee that operates much like a board of directors. I just wanted to give you, I know it may be a little bit hard to read, but these are all the different people and organizations that are leading Reconnecting to our waterways. But we also have hundreds, this list probably doesn't even start to scratch the surface, of all the different types of organizations that have also signed on to say, yes, we support Row, we want to be a part of your work, and we're going to also add our work to your common agenda. When Row was created, all of those steering committee members and partners thought, what does success look like? What do we want success to look like? So we started thinking of the different themes or the different categories, or as we refer to them as elements of a successful project. And we specifically have branded these as elements for Row. Aesthetics, infusing art and natural beauty into the process, resulting in experimental sensory engagement. Connectivity is a lot about trails and making sure that people can actually access those waterways. Ecology, creating conditions that improve ecological form and function. Economics, leveraging opportunities for economic growth for adjacent neighborhoods. That could be everything from encouraging a farmer's market to maybe a roving food truck or other types of ways of really adding economic development to those places. Education, again, like the NSF project. How can we educate about science through art that sort of hits many of these different elements, and using this intersection of these elements in interesting and unique ways? And finally, well-being, creating safe and accessible opportunities that promote and support physical and mental well-being. When I worked on the Indianapolis Cultural Trail, I was always struck by how the Centers for Disease Control said that the closer someone lived to a trail, the healthier they would be. Research showed it. It's not rocket science, right? But if you live closer to a trail or somewhere that you want to exercise and enjoy being, you're going to do it more often. So it all starts to add up. I'm going to just show you a few examples of what we're doing in each of the neighborhoods and then open it up to your questions or comments. So in White River, as I mentioned, this is sort of a map looking at White River. On the right is downtown Indianapolis with the IUPUI campus in pink, Eskenazi Health, the VA Medical Center. But then across the river is where the real magic is going to happen, we believe. We're trying to create better connections with Michigan and New York streets. Hopefully you've heard that Michigan and New York is going to go to two-way, which will really help improve connectivity between both sides of the river. But just on the other side of the river, not only do you have gorgeous views, which actually one of them was the first slide that I have of downtown Indianapolis, you have Metropolitan High School and Goodwill, and a new nonprofit, or a new for-profit, I should say, the Kinney Group, led by Jim Kinney, which is an IT company, and he is extremely passionate about working with this area and specifically located his business, which is exploding in growth because of its proximity to IUPUI, and as he says, one of the best IT schools in the country a half mile down the road. So he's looking to make it more of a tech corridor, and from an economic development perspective, how could that side of the river become the next little Silicon Valley right here in downtown Indianapolis? This is just more drawings about the places that they're looking at along the White River corridor. And then along the trails, we've been working with IUPUI and its track and field and cross country and other programs, and how they utilize the current White River Trail that was completed, I believe, last year through the city of Indianapolis, but how to make it an even more aesthetically pleasing place to be. You'll also notice kind of across the bridge there some planters. Again, just looking at how can we beautify the area and make it a place that really provides visual connectivity as well as literal connectivity. Fall Creek. Fall Creek has extremely well organized and established neighborhoods. Lily Day of Service had already started working somewhat with the Mapleton Fall Creek Development Corporation and Destination Fall Creek. Their two initiatives that were already underway before Roe came along. And again, it's a beautiful marriage when you take a concept like Roe and add it to the momentum and the strength of people and leaders that are already there. But these are some before and after pictures, just after 1 day of Lily Day of Service. So you'll notice on the left, the way that the invasives are just, there's no way you could even see that the creek is even there. And then on the bottom, what it looked like at the end of the day. So acres of invasives removed. In the bottom right-hand corner, you've got an outdoor classroom that was built by Lilly volunteers. And as I mentioned, the Culinary School's orchard. So check it out sometime along the Fall Creek Parkway all the way down to Barton Park, some of the work that's been done. And will continue to be done next month on October 2nd, and their next Lily Day of Service. This destination is at Delaware and Fall Creek Parkway. If you've ever driven north on Delaware Street and then been asked to go in one of 4 or 5 different directions, you'll see the Welcome to Mapleton Fall Creek sign that's there, but then also several huge do not enter signs. And as you might imagine, they are not real keen on that being the gateway to their neighborhood. And so at this particular place, at Delaware and Fall Creek Parkway, that they're fondly calling the Spider, Roe has partnered with them and some of the Kresge Foundation funding to really address this area, work with the neighborhood. And I'm so glad that Molly Jeffers is here because she is working with that neighborhood closely. She's a resident in that neighborhood, and through her organization, Mosaic City, is leading a process to select art for this particular destination, and just work with artists in the community and neighbors itself on what they would like to see in this space going forward. So this Saturday from 11 to 3, it's Celebration Fall Creek. So you can not only check out what's going on at Delaware and Fall Creek Parkway, but all along the Fall Creek Trail to see some of the wonderful work that's going on. Central Canal. We didn't pick the downtown canal. We chose to really focus our efforts on the Central Canal area. All the way from Riverside Park up into the Broad Ripple area is a very long span of trail and of the canal. You also have the White River coming through there as well. So the Central Canal area is really looking at several destinations. I think there are 4 actually on the map, but we've been able to add even a couple more as we keep finding gems of possibilities. And the Northwest area just completed their quality of life plan for kind of the southern western part of this area. In particular, I wanted to point out the spiritual trail done by the Christian Theological Seminary. It was inspired by Roe. It is on the CTS campus, and they have one of the best views of both the canal and White River from their campus. If you've never walked through CTS's campus, it was built and designed by an incredible architect through the Miller family, the famous Miller family that maybe Molly knows, I can't remember, also designed some other famous architecture in Columbus. But they are looking at bringing people from the Butler campus through their campus to connect them better to the canal, to the IMA over on Michigan Road. So they're really looking at ways that they could use this spiritual path through their campus to leverage the waterway and to get people to connect to their campus better. So it's just been a fabulous collaboration. This is, as I mentioned, the Northwest area and what they've been working on in their quality of life planning process. And they too have a big celebration coming up the 20th. If you're interested, I encourage you to check it out. It's to reveal their quality of life plan. So later this month on September 20th. And just as another example of an area that we recently discovered and kind of have some interest around, this is an old fire station called the Birdsall Fire Station that nothing is happening in. It's, as you might notice, kind of fabulous architecture. Could be turned into an arts center or a community center or something great, because right next to it is the end of the canal, or the canal ends before it goes downtown. And then just this railroad is actually abandoned. CSX abandoned the railroad. DMD is very excited about the possibilities for this. I think that looks like a great place for some sort of artwork or sculpture, or it's kind of a sculpture already, maybe a beer garden of some kind. But I think the possibilities for this area are fantastic. And then we could also maybe talk to citizens about completing the canal towpath all the way down into this area. Again, possibilities that when you start to layer them one on top of the other, you never know what could happen. So Pogues Run. I showed you a few pictures of this area next to Flat 12. It really is one of our signature success stories, and I'm so glad Bob Weaver from Flat 12 is here. I showed you a picture earlier before you came in. But this was a bus tour that we did last fall with local commercial investors, trying to encourage them to start looking at our waterways and the property surrounding our waterways as they think about where they would want to locate their businesses, to start thinking about investing in these unique places. And this is just another map showing you Vermont Street is the blue line kind of there in the middle. And you'll see Flat 12. You can't point out where it's kind of muddy, but in those blue areas, Smoking Goose across the street. But just as you can see how all of the elements, or all the little boxes on the sides of Row, the aesthetics, the connectivity, the well-being, education, etc., how they relate to this neighborhood plan. And the Pogues Run Waterway Committee is using this as their plan going forward as they look at how they can really be strategic about their investment and their time. The Velocity Plan by Indianapolis Downtown Inc. is being leveraged by this plan. It's just another example of how all of these plans intersect. Just like with Plan 2020, it's going to be a wonderful thing to have all these plans intersect and see how this is Vermont Street looking east towards Flat 12 and towards Pogues Run, and how we're all working together to try to see something like this actually realized. And this is another view of the Pogues Run Trail, because that too is going to be a very important connectivity piece, connecting you to that waterway, which is so interesting because it actually goes underground on Vermont Street across from that Flat 12 area, but then comes out at the White River on the other side of downtown. So it provides a lot of really interesting educational information and opportunities. In Pleasant Run, I'm glad Alphonse Van Andricum is here, who is one of the co-chairs of the Pleasant Run Waterway Committee, so if you have questions about Pleasant Run specifically. But this is what the three things that they're looking at. They're looking to reduce and restore the roads along the Pleasant Run Parkway, to build more foot crossing and work with the Barth Bridge, which is Barth and Pleasant Run Parkway, near the intersection of Shelby Street and Pleasant Run Parkway. And thirdly, Prospect Plaza and Falls is at Pleasant Run Parkway and the Keystone area. The Coke plant is probably the most iconic place. If you say the Coke plant, this is very close to that. So they're looking at those two areas, both Barth Bridge and Prospect Falls, for where they would like to invest their time and money, should it come along. And these are just some pictures of some of the things that would influence or be brought to those particular projects. These are photos of Prospect Falls near the Coke plant, and again, another great success story. And the fact that we are really working with the neighborhoods on what they would like to see in these places, and the neighborhoods have really picked these places. One of the very first investments that we've made at Prospect Falls is a water fountain and some seating, because those were the most important things to that neighborhood. They said, that is what we really need and what we really want. So if you want to do something for our community, let's start with that. And so that was just installed like a month ago. So we're hoping to continue to build on this and have some big ideas for how this particular area could be better enhanced to create that ripple effect in this neighborhood. But this is just the beginning. This is a picture of Barth Bridge, overlooking Pleasant Run there, and that's Marianne Glick and her husband Mike, and that's my husband Brian Payne, and we took them on a tour. If you see, that's the Pleasant Run Trail right there behind us as you enter onto Barth Avenue Bridge. And so we feel like that bridge in the upper right-hand corner would be a fantastic place for the neighborhood to have farmers markets, to have live music, to just be a really great destination space where really great, wonderful, creative, dynamic things could be happening on an ongoing basis. And finally, Little Eagle Creek. So again, this isn't about the big lake or Eagle Creek that we all know about. This is about actually a waterway you may be less familiar with. How many of you knew that there was actually a waterway that went through Lafayette Square? A couple of you, yeah. I didn't before I started working on this project. That you actually cross it. If you're heading west on 38th Street, there is a bridge there. That is Little Eagle Creek. And so through many different partners, the Lafayette Square Area Coalition, or now known as the International Marketplace, Big Car, lots of other partners are looking at, again, how do we leverage even this little creek to be a better asset for this community? So they're focused in this particular area of Lafayette Square, where Commercial Drive comes off 38th Street there at the very top, and that's Commercial Drive. So you might know H.H. Gregg, Saraga grocery store is down there on the right-hand side. But that green span right down there in the middle, that is Little Eagle Creek. And so this is a picture of Mary Miss, actually, who is an artist working with Butler University, taking a picture of the parking lot that's there adjacent to Little Eagle Creek, where she's thinking about doing her installation. This was last fall, again, kind of a very gorgeous, dynamic picture, not? But this is what it looks like now. We've been able to remove some of the invasives through Big Car and the TeenWorks program over the summer. They were able to, again, create some signature, in what we call invasive sculptures and chairs, kind of this little seating room. And Big Car, those big green grass areas are the garden that they've now moved from their previous location across 38th Street at the mall to this new location where they'll have more gardening going on, I'm sure next spring when it's more appropriate. But really in an area of vast concrete, looking at how we can create as much green space as possible, creating small nodes of inspiration and vitality. So that kind of brings me to, it's just all about what's possible. And it's sort of hard to focus when it's a big city and there's a lot of work that could and should be done. So Roe was just trying to use really the waterways as the framework for those 6 elements. But for me, again, it's all about getting people to want to live and work in Marion County so we can make this a great city with great neighborhoods. I'd be happy to sort of scroll through some possibilities, videos that we have. But at this point, I think I'd just like to see if you have any particular questions, since I'm about halfway through my time. Or any comments about it? Yeah.
Yes. In terms of increasing connectivity, both roads and waterways, 2 things you mentioned were Michigan and New York becoming two-way on the IUPUI campus. I wonder if you could talk about what forces made that happen, if Roe was involved in, if there's a plan to continue that east, because those also really divide communities over in the Pope's Run area that we talked about, in Cottage Home. And the other question is that I was looking at the map when you showed that fire station, and you mentioned where the canal ends. Is it feasible, or is it ever discussed to actually reconnect? Why is the Central Canal cut off there and then start a few blocks later, and could it be reconnected?
Well, this is what happened. I'm sorry that Alex had to leave because he could answer more directly the question about the two-way on New York and Michigan streets. So I know enough to be dangerous, so I may not want to say since this is being taped. I believe that it is going further east. I just don't know how far. I know it's not going much further west, for sure. So I'm sure somebody with the city could be able to answer that more accurately. And I think the reason why they were making it two-way, I know IUPUI campus, even through my work with the Indianapolis Cultural Trail, it's about access and connectivity and slowing traffic. When you've got, I don't know how many students are IUPUI, 10,000 or some, and it's just when you've got two interstates, really three, Michigan, New York, and West Street being 6 lanes or 8, does not make it safe for pedestrians, for cyclists, and that is just fact. So I think a big part of it was to slow down the traffic, make it two-way, and try to, and studies have also shown that, like Central Avenue is a great example of how the neighbors have said how much more connected they feel to their neighbors just by making Central two-way. So I think that was a lot of the reasoning that went into that particular decision. But, and I'm sorry, what was your other question?
Central Canal, at some point it was built in, I guess.
Central Canal, from what I understand, it really actually made the state go broke. It was a project that they carved out, and anybody else who knows much more about this than I do, you do great.
It was in the early 1800s,
Yeah.
and it's the reason why there were laws enacted that will not allow the state of Indiana to go into debt. It was because there was a craze for building canals all across the country since the Erie Canal. And even if some things didn't seem feasible, little towns all over from New York, say, through Indiana, would have little sketches of sudden digging to make these ditches so the boats could come through. And they never got connected. And then the thing kind of went by the wayside, and it wasn't feasible, and people just were spending money, like the politicians do, bring it to my neighborhood, bring it now, and they'd get the money.
Yeah.
And everybody, they go broke. They didn't work.
Yeah. So that's a big reason why.
Then there's the invention of the railroad that came along with that.
Yeah. So it was an old infrastructure idea. I would bet that they're probably not looking to connect it unless it's owned now by Citizens Energy. If there was some other advantage for it. So yeah, that's all I really know about that. Yeah.
One section that I know of in my personal experience that was connected was like from Lake Erie down to the Ohio River. Mm-hmm. And they managed to connect various canal systems to rivers until to get from one place to the other. And a lot of that is, in one sense, I think, been restored, if nothing else. And then there's a place still that's active to this day called the Muskingum River Canal and lock system that's a part of their state parks that goes from Columbus down to Marietta, Ohio, and you can travel it on boat.
I'm sorry. I was just asking about, in the city of Indianapolis, there's the canal.
Yeah.
And there's the canal lower down
right.
downtown. It looks like there's just a few blocks. It is terminated, right?
I don't know. It's more than a few blocks. It's, but I don't know how far it is, and.
Part of it's still at 16th and Martin Luther King, I believe. and
Right, and that's close to that.
kind of ignored it, and then you'll see another part around 21st Street where the canal was, but it was all filled in and blocked off. And I've been by there, but I can't say exactly where it is now to tell you.
Yeah, this isn't really going to help much. But yeah, so I'm trying to pointer. Don't. But
It's already.
yeah, but it does. It comes down fairly far. But there is the canal downtown ends at 10th Street, and then so it's about a half a mile or more to where it. Just north of 16th Street, I believe, and that's where the Birdsall Fire Station is. I was just going to pull that back up. Showing that there, but that's
What street is that?
that is Birdsall Street that this is on, and it's very right around the corner is Fall Creek Parkway. So I just can't remember how far south.
It goes down south to about 21st Street.
Yeah,
2100 north.
I didn't think it was 16th, but yeah. So
Citizens takes the water in for
right, exactly. It's right there.
There's an aqueduct over Fall Creek.
Right.
South of Birdsall.
Okay. So, yeah, any other questions or comments or confusion? Yeah.
To what extent does land use planning factor into Rowe's sort of efforts and strategies?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. To what extent does land use play into our planning and strategies? We've had the city and state Department of Code Enforcement and others come as they think about zoning, and definitely thinking about, as you're writing the laws and regulations for building next to these waterways, keep in mind that we're trying to really encourage development along these waterways, and let's make sure that we work together on all of that. So the city and several of its departments are very well connected into the Rowe initiative. And then, as I said, we're trying to do outreach efforts, as we did like with the Robust Tour for the commercial development, real estate developers, to say, hey, let us take you to and show you, literally, here's vast amounts of land that exist along the waterways, that along the trail system, that have, there are going to be along the transit line as well, and that comes along. So trying to get them to think about that in new ways. So we just have been trying to do a lot of communication and coordination. Is that?
Do you advocate a particular type of land use?
No, we really don't. It is about, again, Rowe at its heart is a collective impact. And it's not, if we have an agenda to push, it is those elements that we want to see projects that achieve those elements. I'll bring those back up really quickly. Those things. Otherwise, it is about just encouraging people to do what they already do near the water or in these particular neighborhoods. And even if they're not in our specific neighborhoods, if they are a little further north or further south, that's just great. But again, just looking at the waterways as this framework to make Indianapolis a great city with lots of great neighborhoods. But no, we try to be as, I'd say the beauty and the challenge of a collective impact, right, is that it's not owned by any particular organization. But we're just trying to leverage what everybody's doing together. So. What else? Bob, do you have any comments or thoughts to share, since you've been very involved at the neighborhood level with Rowe now for a while?
No, I mean, one thing I was thinking the other day when somebody was asking me about the brewery and where we're located and how we market and just what we liked about the job and stuff like that. And I thought about how appreciative we are being where we're at, and I think Rowe's been a big part of that. in that
Would it help if I
Roe kind of puts things in perspective.
I'm just gonna.
Oh, sure. Thanks. Just that Roe has put so much in perspective as to some of those other benefits of being in business. Just how a new coat of paint on the exterior of the building can affect how many people walk by on any given day. So even though neighbors aren't necessarily, walking by and tipping their cap to you, still you can notice an appreciable difference in how people feel about the neighborhood and what type of activity is going on and how connected you are to the other businesses in the area and what kind of enthusiasm you see from the people that are building or rebuilding or investing in the area, or just all those things. Roe has helped connect us with people and just made us more appreciative of where we're at.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. What else? Any other thoughts, questions? Trust me, if you're confused, you're not alone. It's kind of it's a different model for getting work done in the community, and I think it's been very inspiring and kind of liberating to a lot of people too, who maybe looking to get involved, but this provides, it's open to anyone. We have 6 waterway committees. They meet every month, or almost every month, and we encourage anyone in the public to participate and attend just to hear what's going on. We've always got a lot going on, and we've got some funding. Again, we're very excited about the community development block grants. In this co-application with some of our Kresge funding to do creative placemaking, as well as follow the CDBG criteria to make further progress and investments in Roe neighborhoods and further leveraging these waterways as great assets. That application is available on the Department of Metropolitan Development website, indy.gov/DMD, I believe. And they're due October 10th, but anyone in the community is eligible to apply for those. But we are looking through that criteria for those projects to be located as much as possible along the waterways. So, no, yeah.
Just going to say, one reason I came was putting the waterways back into the community. Is that with my experience in past years of being on the river and near the river where I was, it became such a part of me so quickly that I miss it now that I don't have it. And I think that it's an elemental thing for most humans to be near a water place, that it's calming, restorative, natural, more friendly than rocks,
right,
and stones and no trees.
Right, which is why I'm going to pull up a picture of, this is White River on the other side, right, on the west side. It's close to where they just finished the last fall, the White River Trail. This is where the National Science Foundation and Butler University's project is going to be located. A beautiful view of downtown Indianapolis that you can see all along that whole corridor. That's what Jim Kinney and the Kinney Group are so excited about, being on that side of the river. They've got some of the best oceanfront or waterfront property in the city. And that's why it's so exciting that the List Great Places 2020 initiative has chosen this side of the river for one of the places that it's going to be focusing to make that a great place by 2020. It's low-hanging fruit, right? And what's really cool about this particular area is if you look in the opposite corner, if you can see right there, that's where Pogues Run comes out. So it goes underground near Flat 12 at Vermont Street, but then comes out right there into White River. And, what a great educational opportunity to explain urban community development and why it went underground to begin with. And to just, again, have greater awareness for all the businesses and people who live downtown, that when they are, whatever they put down their drains, whatever's going into the stormwater areas of the streets, is going in there. It's going into Pogues Run. It's going into White River or Fall Creek and all of our other waterways. So the more we can do to just be aware that we are surrounded by so much water as we live and work in this place, we will help to clean up these places. And certainly Citizens Energy is doing a big part of it too, with their Deep Brook Tunnel project, to make it so we don't have that combined sewer overflow issue. That's still, 10 to 20 years off, but it's all of these projects coming together. And we really believe that eventually, it's a long-term process, but that, I've had so many fishermen and women come up to me and talk about how excited they are, I wouldn't believe the level of bass fishing you could have on Fall Creek. That there's just these little places where they would love to be able to have better access to do fishing and kayaking. And it's really exciting when you think about, we could be living in a community like Portland, or I've seen the same thing happen in Calgary, Canada. Again, Calgary is very similar to Indianapolis, very landlocked. But yet you're able to swim and kayak and fish in the river that runs right through their downtown area. So that's what we feel like is possible through all of these different initiatives and by bringing such awareness and attention to our waterways. Well, if there's no other questions, I will thank you once again for having me. Again, my name is Gail Payne, and if you want to stick around, we have brochures in the back, and we'd really appreciate you signing up so that we can keep you more informed through our e-newsletter and other communications. Thanks.